Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is AshQuest. Step through the door, if you will, and let us enter the world of the Castle of Condemnation by James Ockett. This is the first in a, hopefully, series of Q-Portal Gamebooks. Books where you make the decisions and control all outcomes whilst reading the adventure. Available to purchase via tinyurl.com/Q-Portal Gamebooks. If this QR code will work for you, you could use it to follow the author on Facebook, or rather, follow Q-Portal Gamebooks on Facebook. If the cover art looks familiar, that is because it is by the esteemed Waclaw Trier of Droned Artworks fame. You'll know it from the coverage I do of the Doom Pilgrim series here on the channel. This is a fantastic example of this artwork being licensed for what I believe to be highly appropriate, ideal even, usage. Are you ready to take on the challenges that await inside Falgor Castle? Your mission is to find and defeat the sorcerer Verash, the castle's evil ruler who has been inflicting a reign of terror upon the innocent folk that live in the nearby village of Avendon. During the adventure, you will encounter a number of characters, although most are determined to engage with you through combat. However, your sword isn't the only weapon you'll have to rely on, for there are other obstacles situated inside the castle where logic and guile are required if you are to overcome them. Can you make it all the way through and reach Verash before he is able to unleash more of his disturbingly fearsome power? I prefer these types of gamebooks that have that bit of mechanical depth that requires you to have dice of some kind. Or at least it's very helpful to have the dice, as in the case of Lone Wolf where you choose numbers from a random number table, you can instead roll a d10. Brain power is also important as you make the decisions that will result in either success or failure. The ISBN, if anybody needs it, I believe this is a KDP print on demand. This particular copy was printed in Dunstable, United Kingdom. This book was, thankfully, the culmination of a successful crowdfund, and although I haven't investigated the crowdfund page, I can only imagine there was a crowdfund because the author wanted to include various bits of licensed artwork, and the book has a healthy amount of artwork in it, none of which is AI generated, which earns the author a modicum of respect from myself. It is worth noting, and is very much described by the author in the generous foreword at the beginning of this book, that this series of gamebooks is inspired heavily by the phenomena known as Knightmare. Speaking of which, the author was very kind and sent me one of the final missing volumes of my Knightmare collection. Thank you very, very much, James. Speaking of the author, James was born in London and still lives there to this present day. He enjoyed all kinds of literature growing up, but particularly enjoyed gamebooks and other interactive fiction. As well as gamebooks, James also liked watching television back in the day, and one of his favorite programs of all time is Knightmare. The show ran from 1987 to 94, and such was its influence that it inspired him to make a YouTube documentary in 2012 to commemorate its 25th anniversary. Various aspects of Knightmare also influenced many parts of this book which you are holding. The Castle of Condemnation is the first of James's Q-Portal Gamebooks and follows on from his debut gamebook Quad-Portal, which was released in the summer of 2024. Whatever text editing software the author used did not have the page count turned on, but I can tell you that there are 213 sections, so a pretty digestible snack for anybody who is accustomed to fighting fantasy or Lone Wolf or Fabled Lands. Although the inclusion of the 2d6 is going to mean we have a lot of combat to get through. It would be remiss of me not to mention that Q-Portal Gamebooks, a selection of longer gamebooks comprising around 400 sections, are coming in the hopefully not too distant future, according to the book. Very nice of James to give me this kind message. After our attributions, which I'm very glad were included here in the front of the book, and the acknowledgement section, "For Tim, the true lord of the game, the dungeon salutes you," we move onward to the contents list. We have a welcome, the characteristics, fighting battles, starting equipment, the adventure sheet, the introduction, and then finally the Castle of Condemnation section itself, before reaching the epilogue and the further acknowledgements. I mentioned the Kickstarter campaign, which ran during June of 2025, and these were all of the backers who supported the campaign at that time. We've also got some special thanks here. There you go, double bonus for all those backers. You were in the book, and then you were also in the book in this video, which may be a penalty depending on how you look at it. Greetings, adventurer. The pathway towards a game of peril and potential glory will open to you within a few moments, but first let's take a moment to learn some information that will be of substantial importance beforehand. Throughout this particular mission, you'll be exploring the many dangers of Falgor Castle with the aim of finding and then defeating its despised ruler, the evil sorcerer Verash. To play this adventure, you will need the following: a pencil and eraser and 2 6-sided dice. dice. Your pencil and eraser will be used to record as well as amend information on the adventure sheet. The dice will be rolled in order to determine your outcomes multiple times, either as a check against your characteristics or to dictate the unfolding of combat when you come across enemies that you may have to fight. Both your characteristics and the process regarding as to how combat works shall be explained on the next few pages. You have 4 different characteristics that will impact how you play this adventure. Brutality, which indicates how strong you are and capable of dealing with combat. Physicality, which demonstrates your ability to be agile and fast when up against certain situations. Mentality, which reflects how your brain responds should you come in any danger, as well as your knowledge to solve puzzles and riddles. And vitality, the characteristic that will change most during this adventure. It shows how much health you have remaining. This score will go up when you eat or drink, but will also go down if you sustain damage. In the event that your vitality reaches 0 or below, this means you're dead and must restart all over again. I'm particularly glad that this is not copying the green, orange, red statistic of the danger level in the Knightmare books. Those seem to set you on a very steady, singular, linear path, and any branching off of it will only spell peril for you, as that effectively gives you a time limit to make choices, a choice-based time limit. To work out the starting scores for each of your characteristics prior to getting your adventure underway, roll 1 6-sided die and add 4 to the number rolled, and that will give you a starting score between 5 and 10 for your brutality. Roll 2 6-sided dice and add 8 to the number rolled to give you a starting score of between 10 and 20 for vitality. For physicality and mentality, these are worked out differently from the other 2 characteristics. You have 15 points which you can allocate between the starting scores for these as you wish. As an example, if you decide that you would like the starting score of your physicality to be 8, this means your mentality starting score will be 7. Note that neither of these characteristics may have a starting score of higher than 10 or lower than 5. So should it be that your physicality has a starting score of 10, the starting score of your mentality will be 5. One final point to take into consideration is that whilst the scores of each of your characteristics will go up and down during the adventure, at no time may they go above your starting scores, unless it happens to be stated otherwise. When you have worked out these starting scores, make a note of them on the adventure sheet. We're going to skip combat just to show you the adventure sheet really fast. We have the characteristics here: brutality, physicality, mentality, and vitality, as well as a number of food parcels. We have a section for battle encounters here, items carried, and notes. I kind of wonder if 6 is the average amount of battles we will happen to engage in before we reach the end. Going back to fighting battles, all combats will be an extreme fight to the death. Note the opponent's brutality and vitality scores inside a blank battle encounter box on the adventure sheet. I'd like to find you an example, so just don't read any of the text around it because spoilers, but in section 18 we will be fighting a hobgoblin who has brutality 7, vitality 8. This does very much follow the very basic stat assignment system of fighting fantasy and Lone Wolf, so if you've played those game books, this will be no different. This will be very familiar to you. Roll 2 dice and add the total to your brutality score. This is your attack rating. Now roll 2 dice again and add the total to your opponent's brutality score. This is their attack rating. If you have the higher one, then you have successfully wounded your opponent, causing them to lose 2 vitality points. However, if they have the higher attack rating, then you are wounded and lose 2 vitality points. And if both of you have the exact same, your blows glance off each other, with neither of you sustaining any damage. Repeat the above steps until either you or your opponent's vitality drops down to 0. If your opponent's vitality reaches 0 first, you will be instructed on what to do next. There is starting equipment. You commence this adventure with a few items that are designed to help you along the way. The sword. This trusty weapon of yours is held in a scabbard attached to your belt, ready for easy access when you need to do battle. A backpack to hold any items you may pick up whilst undergoing your adventure, and food parcels. You begin with 5 parcels and can eat one of them at any time during the adventure, except whilst undertaking combat. Doing so will restore up to 4 lost vitality points. There is a dedicated section for food parcels in the adventure sheet, which can be found in the next couple of pages. When you do eat a parcel, be sure to cross off a relevant box in this section. It is now time to read the introduction and begin our adventure. Now, this is something that I would rather do during a dedicated playthrough of the book, and so what I would rather do at this time, because I would love to dedicate I'd like to dedicate another video to the gameplay of this book, this being the presentation and overall sort of overview before we dive into it. You should have just played it, lad. I know, but I want to give that all the time it needs. I want to start the video with the gameplay in that situation. So the video's fully gameplay. I do want to flip through a bit of this and just take a look at some of the choices that we'll be getting ourselves into and some of the battles. I'm going to try not to get into too much of spoiler territory, but this does look like it's going to be a basic dungeon crawl full of fundamentals. So mechanics spoilers ahead, if you will. This is section 103, and you will have the choice of one of these 3 numbers. You can pull the first, second, or third lever, turning to 114, 125, or 136. This is the branching tool that will lead you to select another passage, and from that passage continue onward, playing until you are elected to jump to another passage or choose from another set of passages, or perhaps engage in some challenge or in some feat of luck. That's quite the phrase, feat of luck. And those choices may drive you onward to select further passages, leading you back and forth throughout the book. And this is pretty typical gamebook behavior, but it does occur to me that probably not everybody has played a gamebook. There have to be some people left on the planet that haven't played a gamebook before. And so this is how you navigate the gamebook, jumping across pages and passages instead of reading in a linear fashion. Some of this artwork looks like it was pulled from PC games from the 90s. I mean, it has very much that sort of style of illustration. This looks like CG when CG was early, and that is not in any way, shape, or form a knock. It's more of a, hey, that's a really nice placement of this, what could be very nostalgic factor, especially if this is inspired by a show like Knightmare, which has a very product of its time visuals. Also, again, still not a knock to its quality or its production. The illustrations are all kinds of different styles, though. That might be the only complaint that I would have. It's more, here's the immersion of the product, not the immersion necessarily of the world that you are helping to build by creating a character and making choices to get to Varash so you can strike him low. But now, having said that, there are a lot of illustrations that do look like they belong in the same universe. So this sort of artwork peppered throughout in between sections, this isn't counted in my assessment of the overall art. It is nice to see this stuff. It's very nice to have it. It's set dressing, and it's not noisy. It's not in the way. It's just really cool to see it peppered throughout. But here we go, the third in a series of illustrations that I think does really help to mesh all of this together. The fourth in a series and the fifth in a series, and yeah, you can really tell that they're all the same artist. And you know, now I'm thinking that every single illustration in the book is the same artist except for that one picture that I just looked at. Actually, that was covered in the attribution text at the beginning, and that is exactly correct. The illustration at section 110 is Dark Castle, which is by David Rowe. Everything else is by Carlos Castillo, with filler illustrations by Matthew Dewhurst, and the cover by Waclaw, of course. We have a choice to be made under pressure in section 131. You must draw your sword, flee for the north exit, or hurry towards the south exit. Some of these choices will lead to battles, and if you lose, well, you die. And if you die in the book, you die in real life. Now, you think that's rubbish, but it's technically true. If you have found the secret of immortality, I'd like to know. Just comment it down below. It's kind of true. If you win the book, you will still die in real life, though, disappointingly. But if you win the battle, you will turn to the prescribed entry in the book. There are unfortunately dead ends, and you'll just have to learn and remember exactly where these are for your subsequent playthroughs. Your adventures may sometimes end in fatalities. You will get the opportunity to pick up items along the way, such as the shield, the stats of which are not described in the passage in which you receive it, but instead will be revealed to you when the use of the item becomes relevant. The reason that I wanted to give myself a little bit more time for just the overview of the book versus the gameplay is because I wanted to read some parts of the epilogue. The epilogue is not one to close off the story, but rather more words from the author, and I thought they were worth sharing. Looking back at your time in the castle, I sincerely trust the adventure was enjoyable, with a leaning to play again and the potential hope of discovering an alternative route to victory. This section of the book gives some background into what inspired the Castle of Condemnation, and also details some influences which happened to shape many of the various encounters and obstacles you might have possibly stumbled across at some point whilst working your way through. As you will have noticed when reading the first page of this book, I was, and still am, a massive fan of the UK television program Knightmare, which was devised and created by Tim Child. When it came to writing The Castle of Condemnation, I had a very clear intention of largely paying homage to this groundbreaking show, and therefore it goes without saying that it was only right to dedicate the book to Tim himself. That makes sense. In the latter half of Knightmare's run, the main antagonist was a character named Lord Fear, who was played superbly by Mark Knight. There was a US pilot of the show entitled Lords of the Game, which saw Lord Fear's name changed to Varash, and I thought it would be rather cool to use his alternative name for the key villain of this book. Another Knightmare character, Pickle, had their name changed to Leafinger, and again, I chose the latter name for a character who's encountered during the adventure's earlier stages. There are also nods to other characters who featured very early on during Knightmare's run. The Giant in the Pit encounter was based on his portrayal by actor Edmund Den, and the guard Gibbet, who's actually called Gibbet on the show, is a nod of approval toward Alec Westwood's sinister but captivating performance of him, although both the Giant and Gibbet, or maybe that's Gibbet, only made 2 appearances each during the first series. I personally liked both of these characters and felt they warranted an inclusion. Remaining on the earlier series of Knightmare, there are also the fantastic dungeon backgrounds illustrated by David Rowe that most certainly helped to affirm the show's legendary status over the years. It was these backgrounds which were used when your contestants were exploring the dungeon. Now that makes sense, and it's really cool that David Rowe had some art that was used in this book. That's really, really cool. Since I interviewed David for my 25th anniversary documentary, I've got to know him in person and now regard him as a good friend. Of course, I had to get David involved with this book somehow, and was delighted when he let me reuse his artwork for the Commodore 64 game Dark Castle. That is too cool. If you want to check out David's incredible artwork for yourself, then I most certainly recommend visiting davidrowe.net. A couple of decades after Knightmare ended and a stage adaptation of the program would soon come into existence. What? Entitled Knightmare Live. Really? That happened? Tregard, the dungeon master for all the show's 8 series, was now played by Paul Flannery, although Hugo Myatt, aka the original Tregard, has been known to make cameos from time to time. Lord Fear has mostly been portrayed by Tom Bell, but I have to mention that Mark Knight was actually one of my advisors when I was the Dungeoneer during Knightmare's live performance at the 2014 Knightmare Convention, along with Stuart Ashens, who was the Dungeoneer in Knightmare's 2013 Geek Week episode for YouTube. The end-of-level guards are named in tribute to Paul and Tom within this book, and finally, it's interesting to note that Knightmare Live has now been running longer than the original TV series, given that the former continues to this present day. I'll let you find the more discreet references towards Knightmare for yourselves. To prevent any further spoilers, I do recommend you pay a visit to the Knightmare.com website if you haven't already. Falgore Castle got its name from Essex's eastern lands of Foulness and Havengore, and Avondon is an amalgamation of Avelay and Ockenden, which can be found to the west of the same county. The Dark Room is another live stage show similar to Knightmare Live, and this is also referenced somewhere during the adventure. All that remains to say is thanks to everyone who helped to make this book a reality, and in particular those mainly within the gamebook community. Every ounce of encouragement is truly appreciated. Other close friends and family have also provided much needed assistance, and a list of everyone who's been pivotal in regards to this book's development can be found on the next couple of pages. Until the next adventure, James Oggett. Looking very much forward to playing this on the channel here very soon. I want to thank James for this book, and once again for the missing piece of my Knightmare collection, as well as this nice coaster. At the same time, I want to congratulate James on the creation of this book and the fact that gameplay-wise, it's as big as an entire Knightmare novel, while the gameplay sections actually dwarf the amount of gameplay sections in every Knightmare novel, given that Knightmare is this much story and this much gamebook. That's pretty typical for the Knightmare books, but that's exactly how much story versus gamebook is in the Labyrinths of Fear. I'm going to try to remember to put a link to the 25th anniversary video down below, as well as the place where you can get this book, and keep an eye on the author's other works. Very soon, brave heroes, I invite you to join me as we storm the Castle of Condemnation. I will see you at that time. Actually, I'll see you in the very next exciting adventure, so until then, brave heroes, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I bid you farewell and onward for now. Bye.